The older I get, the more I feel a deep, sorrowful pain when I remember my Oma, Ellie Leanne Schultz Booth. As a child, I always found it curious that she chose to never return to her German homeland after immigrating to the United States in the 1950s with my mother, my aunt, and my grandfather, an officer in the U.S. Army who she met at a Red Cross unit during World War II. As an adult, I now realize my grandmother's life was shrouded in silence, secrets, and loss. As an adult, I now know choice was a privilege rarely extended to her. I have a blurry 5-year-old memory of my grandmother being upset when her mother, my great-grandmother, passed. I assumed her frantic behavior was due to needing to catch an unplanned flight home. She never left. When Oma passed in 1997, we learned that none of the German addresses in her address book were current. I assumed that side of my family was lost forever until I found an address on the internet for someone sharing the name of her youngest brother and a niece. It took months before I mailed my letter. Perhaps they were not keen on having a black cousin. Maybe that is why my mother and her siblings never had contact with their German family. Or maybe it had something to do with the content, or lack thereof, of nearly a dozen letters from my great-grandmother to Oma that Oma had brought with her when receiving hospice at my parents' home during my first year of graduate school. Sad letters from a mother to her only daughter, who she knew she lost forever, but nonetheless pleaded to see one more time. The letters often included updates about family and friends, but always included a plea to my grandmother to write and share more about her life and her children and husband. Now I'm begging you, dear Leanne, please write to me. I will answer you right away. Oh, but you are so far away. If I could only see you all once more, but this will never happen again. These pleas seem to only produce stubborn silence from my grandmother. I will likely never know what produced Oma's silence and detachment. What I learned when I went to Germany to meet my gleeful cousins and great-aunt in March of 2014, to some extent explains some of the silence and my sense of sorrow about her life. During World War II, 75% of my grandmother's hometown, Gießen, was bombed due to the presence of a German airfield, warehouses, and railway system. Not one, but 2 of her homes were bombed. My grandparents rarely spoke of the war, but I remember 3 stories my grandmother told. Riding a train when a bomb struck the train and blew off the head of her best friend standing next to her. Being on watch duty in a work discipline camp and being rewarded with weekend leave when she spotted a U.S. photojournalist on the periphery. And Allied troops liberating her from the camp. Oma was an ethnic German and was not Jewish, so I never understood why she was in a camp until my cousins pulled out a box of artifacts that looked like passports. They were actually employment record books, and my cousins connected them to my grandmother's compulsory participation in the League of German Girls, a nationalist socialist organization designed to indoctrinate and discipline youth. This new knowledge about her youth reshaped my recollection of a story I always had imagined to be more pleasant than her tales of wartime trauma. Oma talked about a university in her hometown that she loved to go to and sit on the steps and observe the different people from all over the world who attended. When I told one of my cousins about this, he immediately said, "I know the exact spot of which you speak, and I can take you there." I was thrilled. I shared how it was one of only a few happy memories she shared of her childhood. He quickly cautioned me that her childhood surely was not a happy one, because Gießen had been Nazi-occupied since World War I, which precipitously seemed to blame for my great-grandfather's very early death due to melancholia. These facts made me feel Gießen is both haunted and marked by the past. Due to the heavy bombing, the architecture is not aesthetically pleasing, and it is marked by the need to quickly and economically rebuild. The architecture stands in stark contrast to Marburg, a city not far away, whose cathedrals, buildings, and homes capture the varying styles of traditional German architecture that bombings destroyed in most of Gießen. The depressed architecture was compounded by the haunting presence of a U.S. military base on the outskirts of the city that was claimed by Allied forces in 1945 and retained by the U.S. Army until 2008. The empty barracks, officer club, warehouses, gymnasium, and other buildings give the town a feeling of perpetually being occupied. Thus, I would imagine my Oma, who I remember loving to cook and play bingo, had to work hard to find happiness in simple things, had to work tirelessly to forget the trauma that likely haunted her daily. And I must conclude with ambivalence that, perhaps, even if given the opportunity, Oma might not have chosen to return to a homeland that was mired in pain for her and no longer the childhood home where she fondly reminisced of making cornflower wreaths and learning to swim when her father tossed her into the Lahn River. That home ceased to be even before she left.